After its latest surge, Bitcoin has been drifting lower. So are we set to see the price plunge into the end of the year? Hello, I'm David Jones from Currency.com. I thought we'd do an update on Bitcoin because we have seen plenty of volatility over the past couple of weeks or so. So in this video, we are going to just catch up with what's been happening. So a big spike towards the end of October. We'll take a look at our spreads because they are incredibly tight when it comes to trading Bitcoin. I'll talk about some of the reasons for the market moving. Then we'll go back, we'll look at the chart in a bit more detail and set up a trade for the next few weeks in Bitcoin using leverage. As usual, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you can click on subscribe, support the channel, we'll continue to push out content like this. First of all, let's catch up with what happened with Bitcoin towards the end of October.
Let's have a quick catch up with what's been going on with Bitcoin. First of all, let's look at the spread here. This is the top. So our buy-sell spread is 5 cents on Bitcoin. Incredibly tight, which is of course really important when you're trading these sort of markets. Let's take a look at the chart. Here's a major spike late October with the price going from 7,400 up above 10,500. These are hourly candles that you're looking at. So you can see this happens in about 24-hour period, an enormous move. I'm going to talk a bit more about this in a second, but the price has been dropping off and losing some ground since then. We'll talk about some of the reasons for this, then we'll come back and look at the Bitcoin chart in a bit more detail.
We'll go back into the chart in a second and get our trade set up. But we saw that surge because China, the president of China, was seen as endorsing blockchain after there was a feeling that maybe the Chinese government hadn't been massive fans of it. In a speech, the president was calling on China to advance development in this field. And this was really the thing that drove Bitcoin almost parabolic again towards the end of October. But of course, there are always two sides to the coin. In recent days, we've had the former chief of the European Central Bank, Jean-Claude Trichet, come out and say that Bitcoin isn't real and it's just a medium for speculation. So as usual, we have this tug of war when it comes to Bitcoin and the blockchain. We've not had much in the way of real news recently, I think, since that Chinese announcement, which is why we've seen the price drifting. But let's look at some of the big levels to watch, then we'll jump back and get our trade on. So the high hit on that surge following the China speech was 10,420. That's an obvious hurdle left behind, but we do have a close one, up at 9,550 from just earlier in this month. On the downside is where it gets a bit more interesting, and this is what we're going to use for our trade in a second. I think 8,000 is a big level to watch, big psychological level for Bitcoin. After that, we've got the lows left before that surge on the China news. But let's get back into it. Let's take a look at things in a bit more detail and place our trade for November.
So just in case anyone needed reminding, this is what Bitcoin looks like in US dollars so far this year. I thought I'd just change this to a line chart just for simplicity. So we had a good run, starting from, we started the year around about $4,000, pushed as high as almost 13,000 in June. And since then, we have seen the price being sort of trailing off. Let's just put some indicators on this. So we've got 20-day moving average, classic trend following indicator. And with the price being so sideways over the last few months, on the daily chart at least, we have seen just fairly choppy trading with the price and the moving averages flipping over. The last signal we had was a sell signal, and that was a couple of days ago in early November, with the price falling below that moving average. Looking at the RSI down here, we did have what's known as bullish divergence from September through to October, where the price is falling and the RSI is rising. That can be a suggestion that perhaps the weakness has run out of steam. That had been the case. I think that signal has been and gone. And I think at the moment, we're not really getting much off the RSI. It's trading at around about, 43%. So we're pretty much stuck in the middle. Perhaps if we see the price under a bit more pressure from here, that RSI will go oversold and give us perhaps another buy signal. But let's look at the short term and try and set a trade up. So we're looking here at a 4-hour chart. So each of these candles represents 4 hours worth of trading. Back to those June highs, just shy of 14,000. And you can see since then, all the way really until late October, we had seen the price under pressure. We had this news, this announcement from China, did spike up the price of the Bitcoin chart, but it has since then lost some ground. And I'm just wondering, I think it is going to be interesting if we see it under a bit more pressure from here. If we do go, sub 8,000 and test these old lows, I think this is going to be the interesting area around about 7,300, that sort of zone. So ahead of 7,000, where we saw the buyers come back in last time round. Will we see the same thing happen? Let's take a look at things in a bit more detail. So at the time of recording, the price has slipped to its lowest since late October. So under a little bit of pressure, nothing too dramatic, just a gradual sell-off. But I suppose one way of treating this from a short-term trading point of view, we could treat this as just a buying opportunity. It's broken below the old support from the last, couple of days or so. We could take the view, well, actually, maybe this weakness has been overdone and we're going to buy it. So let's place a trade. I think just to demonstrate the trading platform and the tightness of the spread, let's get our trade on. And I'll put my stop loss, I think perhaps the other side of 8,400. So I'm choosing to trade using leverage. I can trade in the exchange by clicking on here, but I'm going to place a leverage trade. And just a reminder of that spread, you can see if I buy, I'm 87.21 to buy, and to sell 87.20.95. So it's a very tight spread. Of course, the price is updating in real time. I'm going to trade using leverage. I can choose the level of leverage down here. I can go up to 100 times leverage. I can use a guaranteed stop loss in that case to cover my risk. I'm going to choose 20 times leverage on the trade. So let's get the stop loss in first of all. So I'm going to say the other side of 8.4, let's say 8.250 for the stop. So if I put my stop at 8,250 and I buy where it is now, around about 87.20, my risk is going to be just over $8,000. That's a little bit too much for this size of account. I've got 10,000 in the account. Let's knock that risk down to more like $300. Let me just adjust the size. So I've knocked the size down to 0.65. You can see I can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin here, even using leverage. And my stop loss in at 82.50, my risk is just over $300 on this trade, and my margin requirement is $283.28. So that's what's going to be tied up from my account on this trade. You can see I've got trading with charts switched on, so you can see where the trade is going to happen. If I choose to click buy, that's it, I'm ready to go. Let's click on buy. And there's the confirmation, bottom left. So because I've got trading with charts switched on, I can see my position on the screen. But to see it in a bit more detail, if I go to portfolio, and I can see the trade done there. So buying, I bought 0.5 at 87.15.5, 0.15 at 87.16.5. There's my real-time P&L just running. I've got my stop losses in place. Of course, I can change those by clicking on them, change the stop loss. If I change mine completely, I can come out for the small profit I've got now of $1.60 if I want to. But the stops are in place. We'll leave it run. I think it's going to be interesting to see if these old levels of support from a couple of days ago do hold, and what we're going through now is a false break, but we'll come back to it and update it and see how those trades are progressing. That's it for our update on Bitcoin. We'll come back in a few weeks' time and see how that trade is doing. But from me, David Jones and Currency.com, good luck with your trading.